Today we're going to look at linguistic determinism and this idea called deconstruction, which is so important. And you'll see why. Oh, there's Frederick. So, language impacts how we perceive the world in a very real way. And I don't know if you guys have ever thought about it, but it's really interesting, right? So how do you guys think language works, right? So what's the common sense way to go about it? It's probably like, oh, I see something, and then I form a conception in my head. Let's say I see red, and I go, oh yeah, that's red, and then I get the concept in my head, and then I give it a word. Right? If I see an apple, that's obviously an apple. If I see a banana, that's obviously distinctly a banana, and then I just give it a word, apple, banana. So this idea of seeing it, and then having a concept in my head, and then having a word requires this very important thing, which is it requires reality to be inherently distinct, right? It requires distinction. So it requires like the color spectrum to already be cut up like this, or to already be cut up like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, whatever. And then it requires that apples are inherently like different from everything else, right? But this runs into a problem, which is, well, what if reality is not inherently different, but it's rather a spectrum? What if reality is not inherently cut up into these little pockets of like red, yellow, orange, and we can see that it's not, because different languages cut up reality differently. For example, in Chinese we might have like we might cut off like this, or like
in
this.
Greek,
right?
There is no.
Exactly. In Greek, there's no.
Exactly.
In Greek, there's no blue, right? So Greek might like this whole section might just be like gray or whatever. And in like Icelandic, I'm sure you guys have heard of this one. In Icelandic, they have like 5 terms for white, or something. So they see that like different languages actually cut up the spectrum very differently. So reality, instead of having distinctions, instead of having inherent distinctions, reality is actually a continuum. So, and we can think about this, right? Because like you guys might think, oh, but an apple and a banana is obviously like different from each other, right? But there's actually all sorts of fruits that are just slightly genetically different, and then slightly genetically different, and then it connects the two eventually. Like an apple, but slightly different, and then in between until it becomes a banana, right? Fruits that are like slightly genetically different. So actually everything is a continuum. Everything is a continuum. And then words are just how we decide where to draw the line between an apple and a banana. We draw the line like here, right? So instead of just seeing a concept and then naming it, what we actually do is we see reality as this like just everything. And then if we see reality as everything, it's too much. We have to differentiate it. We have to make sense of reality somehow. So we differentiate reality by giving things names. And then that's how we get words. Right, so words are actually a system of differences. It's not a system of names. It's actually a system of having a continuum, right? Reality being a continuum, and then drawing lines on where we differentiate things. And this is completely ambiguous, by the way. And every language has their own way of drawing lines, right? And then words is how we divide up reality. Words is how we cut up reality. It's not like red is just there, and then we know that's red. No, it's like we cut up this much of the spectrum, and then we say, okay, between this is red, and then the boundaries of the continuum is the definition of the word, right? Okay, so if reality is a continuum, right, and then words are just how we cut it up. Words actually impact a lot of our perception, right? So for example, how do words impact our perception, right? Like for example, let's say I have like a spaghetti, right? And then I make it like a new type of spaghetti that's just slightly different. It's like slightly different, maybe it has like a little bit more salt or a little bit more cheese, right? And if there was no word for it, if I didn't have a word for my new spaghetti, it would just be, people would just see it and just like, oh, it's spaghetti, but slightly different. It's not important to me. The difference, the distinction is not important to me, right? But if I give it a name, like if I name it like Skibbity Spaghetti or something like that, right? Then it has a name now. Now this distinction becomes important. And to me, this word now shapes reality to me so that it's an important difference, right? It's not just spaghetti, but slightly different. It's like Skibbity pasta or something like that, right? So, words can impact our perception of reality through making us see differences as more important, right? It makes us differentiate reality differently. That's how it shapes our reality. Now,
isn't that arbitrary? Like if I identify some like pasta as Skibbity Spaghetti, then that's only that distinction is only different because of either my sociological or my psychological identification of that specific spaghetti. Like for example, like the Eskimo snows, like the identification was created because different snows might kill you and different snows might not. So if you don't have language, then you would understand that difference either way. But
well, no, everything is different.
This is just artificial.
There's no two things that are like completely identical.
Functionally different.
What?
No, like if this snow is yellow, then I touch it, I die. But if this snow is white and I don't touch it, I don't die. Then assuming I don't have two words for those, the distinction is already there. Because I've seen people touch yellow snow and die. Everything is different. There's no two things that are the same. So this only applies.
Right? So words are the boundaries in which two things are similar enough to be grouped into one. Two things are similar enough for us to like not care about the differences. But if we have two words, then it would be enough for us to care about the differences because we have two words for it, right? So for example, if I didn't know all the different variations of purple and there was like violet and like whatever words, because I don't know all the words, I'm not an artist, but imagine it was like violet and something else, and then I see it, and to me it's just purple. It's not different enough, right? But if I knew the word violet, then I see the color violet, it's like, oh yeah, that's different enough. That's a different color. It's different. It's different, right? But if I only knew the word purple, it wouldn't be, right? For example, like pink isn't like a common color, right? So, like naturally. So, maybe back then, in like, imagine you're a medieval peasant, right? Imagine you're a medieval peasant, and you've never seen that many pink things, but a common color you see is like what, skin color, right? Then to you, to you, that shit is not bubblegum pink. That shit is just skin color because you don't know the word, right? And so you might see it and it's just like, oh, it's not different enough, you know? It's not different enough. It's just skin color, and then it's not, the concept of pink doesn't occur to you as being significantly different, right? So if you have a word for it, then you see reality differently because you see it, you cut up reality differently.
But how do you prove that you created the word to see reality differently, and it wasn't already that reality provided you with a distinction, and then you made up a word for it?
What? Because different languages cut up reality differently. If there was a distinction already, right? If there was an inherent distinction in reality, then all languages would cut up reality in the exact same way, no? Because there's already inherent distinctions.
People live in different places, bro. Like the reason why I would have 5 snows is because there's 5 different types of snow. If you're in
I'm pretty sure there's
Sub-Saharan
5
Africa,
different types of snow like everywhere.
Yeah, but if I was in Sub-Saharan Africa, I'd never have to come up with the word, right? Now I'm asking you.
Yeah. So you
to.
never have to come up with the word. So the word snow to you is just like it's an all-encompassing thing, right? So you see all snow as the same, right? It's not different enough for you, right? If you went to Iceland and then you saw the different types of snows, you would think, oh, they're just snow. It's just snow. It's not like this different type of snow.
Would I have to learn the language to then learn that some snow kills you? Because if I come from Sub-Saharan Africa and I see the snow, right, and I think initially that it's all the same, and then I see Bob here touch yellow snow and he dies, I don't need to first have to learn that word to then make that distinction.
So you're saying, right, that we can use other words to
No,
cut off.
you just need the concept. Like, what separates a word from just the idea? Why is a word
No,
necessary?
you can tell that it's different, but like it's just not different enough to you to see that it's important.
So you're saying that once I find out that something's different enough, I will come up with a word.
Yes, yes. And now,
So then why is the word important?
because without the word, you're not like, it's not important to you.
So I need that word for it to become important to me.
Yes, you need to have a word in order for a concept to become significantly different from another concept, right?
All right, yeah.
Okay.
That's your argument.
Yes. Okay. So now let's talk about something else, right? Not only does language shape our perception of what's important, it also shapes a lot of social constructs, right? And now we're talking about deconstruction. So let's think, for example, that what if gender was a spectrum? Not saying that it has to be, right? You might not believe it, but what if, let's for the sake of the argument, let's say that gender was a spectrum, but we only have two words, and it's male and female, right? Then to us, people who don't know the word like non-binary and all the other types of genders, then to us, society is shaped out of those words, right? Those words shape the significant differences that we perceive in gender, and there's only two, because there's only two words for it. But if we added like a third word, if we add non-binary, then society would have basically essentially another gender that's significantly different from the two that already exist, right? And so words actually contribute to creating social constructs, right? They construct these social like differences, the way we cut up society, right? Words create social constructs. And the person who writes about this is this guy called Dierrda. Yeah, pretty important guy. So, essentially, since we're arguing that there's no inherent distinctions in reality, we're also simultaneously arguing that there's no inherent distinction in like gender or any social phenomenon that we create, right? All these social constructions are just made out of our language, right? Okay. So that's what constructive language. Now, the last power that language has in shaping our reality is associations, right? Language can form associations. And this is written by arguably the most famous feminist philosopher, Judith Butler. Has anybody heard of Judith Butler? You should, because she's the most famous feminist philosopher. Okay, so words have the power of association. For example, like pink isn't a girl's color by nature, obviously. But if we repeat that phrase long enough in society, we say, oh, pink is a girl's color, blue is a boy's color, and this phrase didn't come about until like the 1950s. But if we repeat it long enough, then eventually society comes to think that, oh, it's always been this way. And then we come to justify these associations, right? Oh, pink has always been a girl's color, and then this has always been this way, right? And sometimes these associations are wrong and irrational, and we need to deconstruct these associations, right? We need to realize that these associations are not inherent. They're actually just absolutely just made by reality. I mean, made by society, right? So yeah. Language can shape our reality in forming connections between words. It can shape our reality in how we cut it up, right? Especially in social situations, how we cut up social constructions, right? And language. So can everybody see how language actually shapes our reality? Because it shapes how we cut it up. Yeah?
I don't think with the last example you like distinguish between language and just culture. Like you said that the phrase "pink is for girls" was repeated enough, but it's not just the phrase, right? It's advertisements and magazines and pictures.
Well,
so
yes.
why specifically language and not just culture itself?
Because culture itself, of course, but language also, it develops with associations. Words develop connotations, and it's like things that are associated with the words that you don't need to say, right? You don't need to talk about. And like What does that answer your question? Like,
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, okay. Cool. So yeah, this here determinism, it just means it determines how we see the world, right? Does anyone have any questions? Does everybody get this? How like different languages can cut up reality differently, and how reality is actually a continuum, and no inherent differences exist, right? Like there's no inherent thing in nature that says, oh, this is where red stops, or oh, this is where yellow stops. No. That's we do that, and like we can infinitely cut up these into like infinitely smaller sections. Like for example, green. This is like pale green, and then this is like some other type of green until it becomes like hashtag EFA34, right? But like, you know, even so, you can see how like reality is a spectrum, and like this could be a language in itself, but we don't speak this language, right? So to us, it's not different enough. This is not different enough from EFB4. You know, it's not different enough to us. So they're both just it's all just green. It's all just green because we only have one word for it. But if I for example have more vocabulary, if I was an artist and I knew all the ways to cut up green, then to me, you know, it's not the same. Yeah.
Well, this is a psychological phenomenon, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is psychological. So aren't there distinct differences in perception though? So there is distinction though, because like the difference between sound and sight is distinct.
Yeah.
And if this is all based on how we perceive the world.
Well, look, everything is distinct in perception, but the way in which we group it is words, right? The way, because nothing is inherently like, everything's a continuum, right? Everything's different, but like, they're different along a continuum, and we cut it up into like these manageable sections, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Cool.